let's start with our motivation. And really to treasure the opportunity we have to listen to teachings and to listen with a mind that has respect for the Buddha, respect for the teachings that he gave, appreciating the liberating power of these teachings and the kindness of the Buddha to share them with us. Because for many lifetimes we were born without meeting the teachings. And imagine the kind of karma we created during those lifetimes. And how much pain and suffering there was having a spiritual aspiration but no way to learn, no path taught us. Or even more suffering, having no spiritual aspiration and just living a life of my happiness now, and if it feels good, do it. So in contrast to those kind of situations, now appreciating the Buddha, appreciating the teachings, appreciating our present opportunity. And therefore with a mind that's receptive, let's listen to what Aryadeva and Gyaltsabje have to tell us. And let's do this for the benefit of all beings, wanting to become a Buddha, to work for the benefit of others most effectively and successfully. Whoa. Okay, so we started on chapter 12 last time. So it is, the chapter is called Refuting Wrong Views, especially refuting the true existence of that which is viewed. Okay, and so the chapter began with talking about the qualities of a receptive listener. So have you been working to make yourselves into receptive listeners? What are the qualities of receptive listeners?
Intelligent. Intelligent.
Intelligent, yeah. Sincere.
Appreciative of the teacher and the teachings.
Appreciative of the teacher and the teachings.
Open-mindedness?
Open-mindedness and not prejudice.
Faith.
Yeah, having some faith. That I think goes with appreciation. Yeah.
Humility.
Yeah, some humility. How about completely attentive? Yes, sometimes the answer is right there in front of your nose and you don't see it. Okay, and then the second verse in the chapter talked about how the Buddha explains cyclic existence and its causes, nirvana, and how to attain it. And yet when people don't understand, instead of thinking that it has something to do with them, they think that the Buddha just doesn't explain things very well. Yeah, it's always outside, isn't it? It never has to do with us. And then the next verse, these strange people all agree that by giving up everything one attains nirvana. For what reasons do they dislike that which puts an end to all? So, here are all these people, people from other traditions, or the non-Buddhists at the time of the Buddha, who talked about, nirvana, you have to give up attachment to everything. Yeah, and so here is the Buddha teaching you how to give up attachment to everything, but they dislike hearing his teachings. Yeah, and so why is that? What's going on? And it's because they don't understand what emptiness is, and have a wrong idea of what emptiness is. And so even though the Buddha is teaching them how to eliminate their attachment, they all they do is kind of freeze like deer in the road and say, but, that doesn't work. Yeah. And then they maybe go back to their ascetic practices, thinking that, torturing the body and being extremely ascetic will counteract the attachment, which it doesn't. Or maybe they go to the other extreme of self-indulgent and sense pleasures, thinking that if you have more and better, eventually you'll get tired of it, and that will eliminate your attachment. That doesn't work either. Okay. So, but what does work, they're very skittish about. Mm-hmm. So then verse 279 is the one we're on right now. And it says, how will one who does not know the means to give it up do so? Certainly, therefore, the subduer has said, there is no peace in any other teaching. So the outline, this verse is why there is no liberation in any teaching other than the Buddha's. Now, some people may go, oh, I don't like to hear that. That sounds like we're saying we're the best and only religion and everybody else is wrong. And I hate when other people say that. And I don't want to have Buddhists say that either, that we're the only ones who are right and everybody else is messed up. Right? Because we live in democracy and everything is, goes, and we don't like people to be biased and prejudiced and so on. On the other hand, what's wrong with if that statement is true, then what is wrong with saying something that is true? Yeah, you can say it like, we're the only one who has the truth. Or you could say, check it out for yourself. Look at this teaching. Does any other teaching really counteract ignorance, anger, and attachment in the same way? And check it out for yourself and see if you can find something else that does, or some logical reason why another tradition works. And then, then fine, don't believe it. Okay? So, yeah, because I remember the first time hearing this, it was like, oh, I don't like when Buddhists say we're the best ones. Yeah, but, yeah, because most of us have come from religions that said they were the one and only way, and we really rejected that. Yeah. But on the other hand, we do have to use our discriminating wisdom, and do all, philosophies or religions have a path that leads to nirvana. Yeah? I mean, it's kind of like, I don't know, saying all the all the political treatises are all equally accurate, or all historical analyses are all equally accurate. Is that true? Yeah. No. Yeah, but we have a difficulty saying it in terms of religion. But like I'm saying, we don't have to say it with arrogance. You know, you just check out for yourself. People often ask me, you know, can other people from other religions attain nirvana? And I say, if those religions teach renunciation and the determination to be free, and if they also have the view of emptiness, you know, talking about the dependent arising and the lack of inherent existence as being non-contradictory, so that they can assert emptiness and cause and effect at the same time. Any faith that has those, yes, their followers can attain liberation. And if they say, can other religions attain full awakening, I say, well, if they have those two elements of the correct view and renunciation, and if they have bodhicitta, and remember, bodhicitta isn't just love and compassion. Bodhicitta is much more than love and compassion. Okay, so if they have those, then yes, they can attain full awakening. Yeah. Oh, then people go, oh yeah, that sounds like you're very non-biased. Yeah. You know, and it's true, but then you have to go out and check other philosophies and other religions and see what their teachings are. Do they contain these kind of teachings? Or do those philosophies and religions, you know, advocate belief in a permanent creator? Or do they, you know, have grasping, you know, at true existence and think that everything is truly existent? So we have to check these other paths and really see what the teaching is there. Unless you want to say it doesn't matter what the teaching is, any religion, whatever the teaching is, leads to the same goal. But that's like saying any street you take down will lead you to the same place. Okay, so, you know, I think we have to be able to differentiate things, but to do them without arrogance and without, you know, deprecating others. But like I say, you know, when His Holiness has interfaith dialogue, and sometimes people want to say, well, that's just like what we believe, and His Holiness always says, no, it doesn't have to be. We can get along even though we believe different things. Okay. So, okay, so the question here with this verse, Joe Blow says, if these strange people all agree that one attains nirvana by giving up everything, what is the difference between you and those non-Buddhists who say that? Okay, it's a good question, isn't it? Yeah, and so the answer is that those non-Buddhists have the wish to give up everything, but they don't know how to. Okay, so they see that attachment brings suffering, but they don't know how to completely cut it off. Okay, and so they cling to the wrong methods and they practice wrong methods, and they don't know that the way to get rid of all attachment is through realizing the emptiness of inherent existence. They don't understand that. Okay, and so because they don't understand it, they aren't interested in those teachings, so they don't practice those teachings. So as long as you know, someone's continuing to grasp at true existence, then there's going to continue to be attachment and anger and confusion and so on. Okay, so the Buddha taught about stream enterers, once returners, non-returners, and arhats. And if we understand how somebody becomes each one of those, which those of you who followed the Paths and Grounds teachings, I'm sure remember, then you'll understand that, you know, unless other teachings have these same characteristics as the Buddha's teachings, they're not going to lead to the same result. And then you ask yourself, have I heard, the same teachings given by the Buddha, given by other people or not? Yeah? And then just see. Okay? Then verse 280 says, whoever doubts what the Buddha said about that which is hidden should rely on emptiness and gain conviction in him alone. So this verse is about the means to gain certainty regarding extremely obscure matters taught by the Buddha. Okay, so here there's three types of phenomena in relationship to, any particular being. Things that are evident or obvious that can be known directly through direct sense perception. We can see that this is green, we know there's a telephone here, those kinds of things, okay? Then there's slightly obscure phenomena. Sometimes it's translated as slightly hidden, or slightly obscure might be better. And these phenomena you cannot tell, an ordinary being cannot know with direct perception, especially with direct sense perception, but you have to know them by using reasoning. Yeah, they're only available to us through reasoning. So emptiness falls in this category. Yeah, when people say everything's empty, it doesn't mean you open your refrigerator and it's that kind of emptiness that you can see with your eyes. Okay? It's empty of inherent existence, and that can only be known through refuting the possibility of anything existing inherently. Okay? So you have to use reasoning to know those slightly hidden phenomena, or slightly obscure phenomena. Then there's very obscure phenomena, and those are things that we can't know directly, and we also can't know by it's called reasoning by the power of the fact, which was the reasoning that you used to know the slightly obscure phenomena. But instead you have to rely on authoritative testimony. So the classic example, okay, is our birthday. We don't know our birthday directly. We can't use reasoning to know it. So we rely on our parents, who are authorities, to tell us when our birthday is. Okay? And we believe them because they have no reason to lie, and they were there when it happened, and so on. Okay? So it's a belief in authoritative testimony. And that's how we know extremely or very obscure phenomena. Okay? So, so Joe Blow comes along, again, our friend Joe Blow, and he says if Buddha is omniscient, he must have super knowledge of these very obscure phenomena, like the size of Mount Meru. But how can we be sure of that? Now this is an interesting question, because he's going to go on to show why the Buddha is a reliable person regarding, why we can take the Buddha as an authoritative testimony. And here the example is like the size of Mount Meru. But, Aryadeva wrote this, and Gyaltsabje wrote this before they had any scientific knowledge. So it kind of is the wrong example to use about how you should trust the Buddha based on authoritative testimony, isn't it? Yeah. Because, as it turns out, if you use, we can't see the earth being round and so on, but through measurements and the reasoning entailed using measurements, then you know, we can show that the earth isn't round, and that, you know, we have pictures from space. There's no picture of Mount Meru. You know, there's more than 4 continents, you know, and the sky isn't different colors, and, you know, on different sides of Mount Meru, and the sun and moon, you know, don't revolve around the earth, and this kind of thing, okay? So His Holiness goes into great detail when he teaches about this in India, to say to people, you know, if something can be directly disproven, then we have to let go of what it says in the scriptures, no matter how old it is or whether the Buddha said it or not. The thing that he always emphasizes, though, is that it has to be disproven. It's not just that you can't prove it. You have to prove the non-existence of it, okay? Because, for example, something like rebirth, people could say, well, you know, how do I know about rebirth? I don't see it. And you can't say that just because you don't see something, therefore it doesn't exist. You have to be able to prove that it doesn't exist by saying, if it did exist, it should be here under these conditions. Here are those conditions. It's not there. Therefore, we've disproven it. Okay? So you can't really come up with some kind of argument that disproves the existence of rebirth. Yeah? All you can say is, I don't remember. But that's like saying my car keys don't exist because I don't remember where they are. Yeah. Or, you know, rebirth doesn't exist because I can't see it. Well, therefore my stomach doesn't exist because I can't see that either. You know? So, you know, we have to use better kind of arguments. Okay? So in the Buddhist tradition, you know, when they want to show that the Buddha is a reliable person, yeah, one argument they use is the one that we went over in the class on Easy Path about why the Buddha is a reliable person. You know, because he has the wish to help others, because he has realized emptiness directly, because he's the Sugata, because he protects sentient beings. Okay? And so that argument shows, you know, if you have a receptive mind, that the Buddha is a reliable person. If you don't have a receptive mind, that argument doesn't make any sense to you. Okay? So it's quite interesting because, you know, we always think that if you present a reasonable argument, then everybody should see the truth in that argument. Yeah, because we somehow think that that argument from its own side has the power to convince somebody because it's inherently true. But that's not exactly it. You know, an argument can only convince somebody if that person is receptive. And also if that person has understood many other kinds of things before. Because the reason that you give in an argument, you know, may not be something that that person understands. So that person actually needs many kinds of syllogisms and much kind of, you know, a lot of different instruction before they get to the point where they understand that syllogism that you're giving them. So don't think that, you know, just because you give a fantastic argument that therefore somebody's going to change their mind. Yeah. The power doesn't exist in the argument itself. The person has to have a certain level of knowledge and a certain level of receptivity. Okay? So, yeah. So we're trying to show how the Buddha is a reliable person. So one thing that they use very often is that Dharmakirti explanation. Yeah. The other one is, and this is an argument so that you can infer that a scriptural passage is accurate and free of fault. So there's a threefold analysis that you have to give for a scriptural passage to show that it, is something valid. So the first is that there's no reason to reject that scripture in terms of its presentation of obvious or evident phenomena. Okay? So its statements regarding the obvious phenomena aren't invalidated by a direct perceiver. So if there's a scripture that says all cantaloupes are purple, that can be invalidated by a direct perceiver. We can perceive that cantaloupes are not purple. Okay? So then saying that scriptural passage or even that whole scripture is valid, you can say, well, no, because even on obvious things, it's wrong. Yeah, it's not an authoritative scripture because I can see that cantaloupes aren't all purple. Okay? So that's the first reason, that there's no reason to reject it based on what it describes of obvious phenomena. Okay? The second is there's no reason to reject that statement or that text in terms of its presentation of slightly obscure phenomena. Okay? So to evaluate this, we see, how what its arguments are for talking about ultimate truth and talking about other kind of topics that can be proven by using reasoning. Okay? So it's, it can't, other passages or that even that particular passage can't be invalidated by the inference that is used to prove slightly obscure phenomena. Okay? So in the case of a scripture, if it starts talking about, there are functional things that are permanent, then you can refute that using reasoning. Or the scripture starts saying, there is a foundation consciousness that is truly existent. That can be refuted by reasoning. Okay? So then, that particular passage, or even you could generalize it often to other passages, that particular passage, certainly you wouldn't believe, but other passages in that scripture you wouldn't necessarily, take based on authoritative testimony if the same speaker said things that could be disproven by inference by the power of the fact. Okay? So it's interesting when it comes to some Chittamadra, or Sautantrika teachings. Okay? There's some of those teachings that we accept and some that we don't accept. Yeah? And because some of those teachings can be refuted through inference by power of the fact. Because they're asserting true existence or something like that. Okay? So it isn't like those scriptures that were taught by the Buddha, where Buddha said other things that he said as a skillful means for people who have different dispositions. It doesn't mean that if those passages can be disproven by reasoning of the power of the fact, that we then throw out the whole scripture and say nothing in it is true. There could be other things that are true, so we have to, again, test those. Okay? Then, the third condition is there's no reason to reject this statement or the entire text in terms of its presentation of very obscure phenomena. So, in order to assess this, there's two factors to examine. First of all, in its presentation of very obscure phenomena, the explicit and implicit meanings do not contradict each other. Okay? So, the explicit meaning is the evident theme of the sutra or the scripture, and its implicit meaning is the other topics that act as the basis for talking about the explicit meaning. So, for example, in the Perfection of Wisdom sutras, the main topic is emptiness. That's the explicit one. The implicit teachings are the paths and grounds to full awakening, and everything you need to know about different kinds of phenomena and paths and grounds and so on. So you want to see that in a scripture that those two things don't contradict each other. Okay? Then the second factor that you check is that in the presentation of very obscure phenomena, the former and latter passages don't contradict each other. So if at the beginning of a sutra, they said, what would be a good example? Oh, Mount Meru is 12 feet tall, and later in the sutra it says Mount Meru is 12,000 feet tall. Then there's some contradiction between earlier and later passages. That's kind of a gross example, but I think you get the idea. Okay, so, on this basis, then when there are things that only a Buddha can know because they're out of range of our knowledge, then we can trust what the Buddha says about those kinds of things. Yeah? Okay, so, So if a scripture meets those three criteria, then accepting its statements as true will give us knowledge about things that we wouldn't ordinarily know about. So they often in this topic, they come up with a quote from Nagarjuna, who says, fortunate rebirth is a result of ethical conduct, and wealth is a result of generosity. Okay? And so some people say that is something that can be proven by reasoning of the power of the fact, and it's only the very specific instances of what one specific sentient being did at this particular time that led to this, certain result. Yeah, that only that, the individual knowledge is very obscure. But just the general principle, they say, is only slightly obscure. And then other people say, no, that general principle actually is slightly obscure. Is very obscure and has to be taken on the Buddha's word. So it's an interesting thing to think about, because in one way, when you really think about it, it makes sense that generosity leads to wealth, doesn't it? Yeah, because we have this kind of feeling that, in modern language, what goes around comes around. And to a certain extent we can see that in our regular lives, that if somebody is very generous, then other people are generous back to them. Yeah, whereas somebody who is not very generous, then other people usually don't feel like helping that person. Okay, so in one way it makes sense using a certain kind of reasoning. Can you prove that totally by that reasoning? I'm not sure, but you can see that it does make sense. Okay. Similarly, I think for the existence of other realms, we see animals, but we don't see the hell realms. They're not evident to us. So in one way, you could say that they are extremely obscure, that you have to rely on the Buddha to believe in the God realms or in the hell realms. But in another way, if you think about it, and you think, well, what about somebody's mind who they're just so angry all the time and bitter and resentful and vengeful and belligerent, you know, and then you think, okay, somebody dwells in that mind state most of the time. Wouldn't it in some way make sense that then they take a body that's reflective of that mental state? Yeah, it would kind of make sense, wouldn't it? Or somebody who's very generous, who's very kind, who's very, you know, sharing and loving, you know, and abides in that kind of mental state. Wouldn't it make sense that they had, you know, a fortunate rebirth? Yeah, it would. Okay. So, you know, in one way, you know, we can use reason for that. In another, whether that's a definitive, you know, argument, that I'm not sure. I don't know. However, yeah, to prove just the existence of rebirth, that can be done through inference by power of the fact. Okay, that the existence of rebirth, you know, isn't an extremely obscure phenomena that you just have to take a leap of faith and believe in. Okay, but like I said before, that doesn't mean that the argument or any argument that's given to prove it is necessarily going to work for every particular individual who doubts the existence of rebirth, because that individual has to have certain understanding first before that comes about. But I think once you can assert the existence of mind, if you can get somebody to accept the existence of consciousness, yeah, then from there I don't think it's too big of a thing to get them to see that consciousness arises from causes, it has effects, and so it's got to go beyond just the consciousness of this lifetime. Okay, so by talking about causality, you know, can prove the existence of rebirth, you know, of the continuity of consciousness before this birth and after this birth. Okay. So that was verse 280. Okay. Then verse 281, yeah, is it says, the outline, that it shows others' teachers aren't authentic. Okay, so again we go, oh, are we putting down other people? You know, but here again, you know, let's just look and see what people say and if what they're teaching is authentic or not. So verse 81 says, those who find it hard to see this world are ignorant of others. Those who follow them will be misled for a very long time. Okay, so non-Buddhist teachers who have difficulty knowing even the coarse cause and effect of physical things in the environment and of beings in this world, if they're ignorant of gross causality like that, they're going to be ignorant of subtle matters. Okay? So, dare I bring up a very provocative issue, accepting evolution or not? Yeah. So if there's some people that completely, if evolution is something that can be proven through reasoning, if you completely dismiss it, that's kind of dismissing an example of gross cause and effect. So people who do that certainly are not going to be thinking about the emptiness of true existence. Yeah, and sure enough, they don't. You know, what they're asserting is, creation from a permanent cause, which is something that we can refute. Okay? So, and so these non-Buddhist teachers who have these wrong assertions, about coarse things are going to have wrong assertions about subtle causality, and the people who follow them are going to be influenced by their teachers' innate afflictions and also their acquired afflictions. And they will be misled for a long time, unless it is a student that is extremely sharp. But most people, if you look at a teacher and you have respect and confidence in that teacher, then you mostly believe what they say. And this is why we're always encouraged to be sharp faculty disciples and not just believe what somebody says because they said it, but actually question. And can this be proven? Because otherwise, any Tom, Dick, or Susan who comes along will tell us some philosophy and we'll believe it until the next day, Harry, Meredith, and Sandra come along and teach us something else, and then we believe that. Okay? So they say those interested in their own good should leave false teachers and value and trust true ones. But despite this, you look around and how people value and trust false teachers and false teachings, because sometimes those teachers and their teachings are meeting an emotional need that person has. And, people function on the basis of emotion, I think, most of the time. And so if something meets an emotional need, we follow it. And, use our reasoning. Either we don't use our reasoning, or we use our reasoning to quote, validate something that is wrong, but that makes us feel good. Because at the end of the day, something that makes us feel good is most important, isn't it? It's sorry to say, unless, we all want to be sharp faculty disciples, but are we? Or do we just go with what feels good and what already, agrees with our own ideas? Because we can see it, people come here, and as long as what we say makes them feel good and they agree with our ideas, they love the teachings. As soon as we say something that challenges some deeply held belief or some deeply held attachment that they're holding on to, whoa, then they call everything into question, because that attachment to something or some belief is getting threatened, by another teaching. And it's like, I don't want to hear that. So therefore, it must be wrong. Yeah?
I hear people using the word extreme as a response to that. When they become uncomfortable,
yes,
they call it,
right.
That's a bit much.
That's a bit extreme. Right? Yes, you're very extreme. Yeah. Right.
You're overdoing it.
Yes, you're overdoing it. Yes. Can't you just cut that back? Can't I have some of my attachments? Do you really have to refute? Do you have to really give up all of them? I mean, some of them, and that's when you hear people formulate a question that says, what's wrong with? And as soon as they say, what's wrong with, you know that something is really hitting. Okay? Because first of all, you never say, you didn't say at the beginning that something was wrong with that. It's not a matter of right or wrong. It's a matter of, if you do this, you get this result. If you do that, you get that result. That's not right or wrong. But some people don't want to And this includes us, unfortunately, too. We don't want to face the fact that if you do this, you get this result. Because if you do this, we really want to get that result. Yeah. And anything that doesn't allow us to is extreme or wrong or something like that.
Well, and feeling good, I don't know if it's just cultural, but somehow this idea that feeling good is correlated with spirituality. A spiritual experience has a feeling tone about
Right, yeah.
it isn't facing my afflictions.
Yes, that's a good point. That we have this idea that spiritual experiences are always light, love, and bliss that make us feel good. And that if something doesn't make us happy, then it must not be spiritual. Yeah. However, when our attachment is getting challenged, or our anger is getting challenged, or our stubbornness is getting challenged, it doesn't feel good to our ego, does it? Yeah. And yet, if we can continue through those difficulties to the point where we can split it open and see things, that thing as it is, it can feel good in the end. You may have to go through a process of, but then in the end you realize, well, it's true, if I give that up, I'm going to be happier and I'm going to be able to, practice better. Yeah. But at first, no, so then they want to have a debate.
I just think it's so fun.
Yeah, but we do it. Yeah, we've all done it here, right? We're not talking about other people. We're talking about ourselves. Yeah, aren't we?
I don't understand the incredible lack of freedom and the imprisonment that those views keep us in.
That's true. We don't understand how imprisoned we are by those kinds of views and thoughts and emotions. Yeah, because we so much believe that they're true. Yeah, and we don't see that they're prison. And so that's why sometimes we build our prison and we decorate it. Yeah. I think I'll have pink bars on that side of my prison. It's so pretty, and I'll have curly-Q bars there, and I'll put a comfortable sofa against this wall of my prison. Oh, yeah. Yes, and we call Venerable Yeshe in to build us some shelves. Yeah. Yeah. So there we are. Okay. Verse 182. 282, sorry. Okay. The unwise take no delight in letting their mind follow a guide who has done that which is most difficult, attaining nirvana. Okay, so this is, the outline is the difficulty of understanding the meaning of the fundamental mode of existence, and why is emptiness feared, and why some people who seek liberation follow non-Buddhist teachers. Okay, so Joe Blow says, well, why do those people seeking liberation follow non-Buddhist teachers? And the verse says, the unwise take no delight in letting their mind follow a guide who has done that which is most difficult, attaining nirvana. Their mind makes it difficult to follow the most excellent teacher who explains the nature of reality and the path. Okay, and specifically because they're afraid to listen to teachings on emptiness. Okay, so to be cared for by a spiritual mentor, freeing oneself of the latencies of self-grasping ignorance and going to nirvana are very difficult. Okay, so although the Buddha, or Buddhas with great compassion who did this come to guide us, then unwise people are not willing or happy to follow his guidance, the Buddha's guidance, because they fear emptiness. Okay. Now, His Holiness, then I'm going to give you a preview to the next verse, just in case we start to get a little bit arrogant here. We might think, I'm not afraid of emptiness. Yeah. I'm not afraid of emptiness, so I must be one of these wise people. Well, the next verse, I won't read it, but the point is that if you're really dumb, you're not afraid of emptiness. And if you're really wise, you're not afraid of emptiness either. It's only the people in the middle who are afraid because they're
Or dumb and think they're wise.
No, if you're dumb and think you're wise, you aren't afraid of emptiness.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because you're dumb. Yeah, but it's the people who are getting the implications of emptiness that become afraid of it. Okay, it's like any kind of topic. If you don't know anything about it, you're not very afraid of it. Yeah, I mean, maybe skiing down something, skiing down really fast. If you don't know anything about skiing, it's I'll just get up there and go down and it's fine. And if you're an expert, then you're also not afraid because you know what to do. But it's the person who, knows the danger in skiing who then has the fear of it. Okay, so His Holiness in Hamburg told the story of one man from Bihar who, who came, and wanted to ordain, and His Holiness ordained him. And then one time they were talking about anatta, selflessness. Yeah, and I think this person must have been, maybe they grew up Hindu or, some other religion, but, clearly they believed in a soul or a self. Because His Holiness said when they were talking about selflessness, this person became so anxious that he was trembling. He was trembling. That's how anxious he was. So he must have understood enough that his basic view was really threatened. And His Holiness said he had to talk to this person for a long time, to really reassure him that just because things were empty, it didn't mean nothing existed. Because that's where he went when they were talking about emptiness. He said, then there's nothing that exists. And he had panic. Yeah. And His Holiness said, no, things still exist even though they're empty. But he had to really convince the person of that. So that's a very good example of it right there. Okay? So, okay, let's do the next verse anyway, 283. Okay, so this is recognizing a person who fears emptiness. And Joe Blow says, well, who is afraid? And Aryadeva says, when it is not seen, fear does not begin. When seen, it stops completely. Thus one can say with certainty, those who know a little are afraid. Yeah?
About that fear, can we use the example like falling off a ladder?
Mm-hmm.
That fear that you feel inside, I'm gonna die, or can we use that?
To identify the object of negation? Or use that for what?
Emptiness, yeah.
Okay, so the fear that you have when you're on a ladder or standing on the edge of the cliff that I'm going to fall off,
Yes.
is that the object of negation that's appearing vividly at that time? I've heard some people say that it's not exactly that, because at that time we're mostly thinking, I am my body. Whereas the subtle grasping does not think, I am my body or I am my mind. Okay? But that's something to check up, to look at our mind when we're afraid. But you can see, those times, we're afraid our body's going to get hurt. So there is a lot of feeling like I am my body. If my body gets hurt, I get hurt. Yeah. Okay, so Aryadeva says, in response to the question of who is afraid, okay, so the first line says, when it is not seen, fear does not begin. So people like cowherds or bankers who don't see emptiness as either good or bad can hear about emptiness 100 times and not feel afraid because they don't regard it as either beneficial or harmful. Yeah? So you can go to a teaching on emptiness, hear this many, many times. There's never anything inside you that shakes because you're not really getting the meaning of what's being said. You might even be able to say the words. Yeah, oh yeah, things are not truly existent because they're not one, they're not many, blah, blah, blah. But it's not having any impact. So when it is not seen, fear does not begin. So when you don't understand anything, you aren't afraid of it. Okay? When seen, it stops completely. So that means when you perceive emptiness directly, having gone through the gradual process of hearing teachings on it, contemplating those teachings, and then meditating on those teachings and having a direct perceiver of emptiness, then there's no fear of emptiness because you've realized it and you've gotten rid of your self-grasping ignorance. Okay, so there's no fear of, because it's the self-grasping ignorance that's the cause of the fear. It's the one going, nah. Okay? So, thus fear arises in people who have a little knowledge of emptiness. Okay? So those who know a little are afraid. And here, this means, for example, neither a well-trained person nor a fool, people who have a little knowledge of emptiness are people who have some kind of inferential understanding of it. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So, you're really kind of getting what the implication is of things not having their own essence. And it's those people that have the fear. So we hear this story, about the monk who's meditating on emptiness who all of a sudden grabs his donka. Am I real? Am I real? That person is having an inferential understanding of emptiness. Okay, or is on the verge of having that understanding. So they're really getting it. They tell a story about the monastic who's meditating on emptiness and all of a sudden gets afraid and grabs his donka to, am I here? That person is not somebody who's directly perceived emptiness, because in that case they wouldn't have the self-grasping manifest in their mind at that time. And it's not somebody who doesn't understand emptiness whatsoever, because that person isn't afraid of emptiness. So it's somebody who is getting some feeling of what emptiness is about, or having, for example, having an inferential understanding of emptiness. So that's because they're getting the implications of it. So the example that Gyaltsabje gave here is neither a well-trained person nor a fool is afraid to mount a wild elephant. But someone who knows a little about the dangers and the benefits of doing so is afraid. Okay? So it's kind of like, when you're young and you think you're invincible, you're not afraid of anything. Yeah? When you've really mastered that particular skill, then you're also not afraid. But when you get a little bit older and you haven't mastered the skill and you realize the dangers, okay. Okay, so questions, yeah.
Could you say then that a fear of emptiness is a phase in anyone studying emptiness?
It sounds like it's kind of like a stage, yeah, that you go through. Yeah? Of getting that inferential understanding. I think, my guess, this is just my guess, that it may depend too on how much merit you've created. Mm-hmm. If you've created a lot of merit, chances are you're not going to have much fear, because you will have already trained your mind to see emptiness as the elixir for your suffering. So if you have a very sound foundation of knowing how self-grasping is the enemy, yeah, so that you have a lot of merit, so that you really, really want to realize emptiness, yeah, then I don't think that the fear is going to be so much, because there's a lot of merit, and you've really prepared your mind well, and you're kind of, looking forward to realizing emptiness. Yeah. Whereas somebody who maybe just has a general knowledge about that, then, might get more afraid.
Also, in line with all the teachings we've had on the objects of refuge, it would seem
Mm-hmm.
that if you really focused on that as the aspiration for realizing that, it would do the same thing that you're saying.
Yeah, if you had very deep refuge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Understanding.
Huh?
Understanding what it is.
Yeah, understanding what
What
the objects of refuge are. Yeah. Uh-huh.
On verse 280,
Mm-hmm.
I read something that to me makes a lot of sense with how this verse is written, because it says this thing about should rely on emptiness. And it was something His Holiness said in the book about these three criteria that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
About the third one, and he said the person who's realized emptiness, they, the things, he kind of made a statement like, these things that are extremely hidden are kind of trifle at that point.
Mm.
They think of them as not so important, and because they realize emptiness, they're able to just, they have the trust in the Buddha, essentially.
Right.
Just like they can do that.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah.
And also, those are kind of the two parts. One, they had the realization, and two, they saw those things were kind of trifle, and they had this great faith. This is what I read into it
Mm-hmm.
from the Buddha, which is kind of how this verse is written.
Yeah.
Gain conviction in Him alone.
Right. Yeah. Because so many things, when you really dig deep, it all comes down to realizing emptiness. How do you have perfect faith in the Buddha? By realizing emptiness. And then you realize that faith has nothing to do with blind faith. It has everything to do with understanding and conviction. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm remembering that in one of his books, His Holiness wrote about his own first inference.
Mm-hmm.
And he said it was like lightning in his heart.
Yes.
And then he also said that for a little while after that, he walked around and things just seemed so incredibly different. He felt kind of distant from people, almost like just a whole different feeling.
Yeah.
Is that,
Well,
I remember that also.
Yeah. Yeah, he talks
So
about
he
it.
had all his merit,
Yes.
his readiness, and
Yeah.
all this bodhicitta.
Right. Oh, undoubtedly the realization of emptiness is going to change how you see things. Undoubtedly. Yeah, undoubtedly. Whether you react in fear or not is, you know, that there may be some difference. But undoubtedly that realization is going to impact how you feel about the whole world and how you feel about yourself. Yeah. I mean, it's got to. If it didn't, then it's not getting rid of the cause of cyclic existence. Yeah?
So then that's what we fear as we approach it.
Because everything's going to change.
Giant shift.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you realize emptiness, it means then all the samsaric stuff that we've grasped onto as bringing real pleasure, then we realize there is nothing there. Yeah, that it all exists just as appearances. You know, that there's only appearances there, and all this other stuff that I took refuge in, that I thought was so real and my real source of my happiness, is just something that exists because it's merely labeled. It's like, you know, talking about upsetting your view of the world, that's going to do it, isn't it? It's like everything you believed, it's like realizing your best friend has been lying to you from day one. That's what it's got to be like, you know. Something you trusted implicitly. We trust our self-grasping ignorance implicitly. And then all of a sudden you realize it's been lying to you. Like your best friend's been lying to you. Yeah, I mean, imagine how shocking that is. And this has got to be more shocking.
But then in that case, you can really see how it cuts the cycle of rebirth.
Yeah.
I mean, it's over.
Yeah, but then you have to really want to cut
Right.
the cycle of rebirth,
And cut,
you know?
Think about it, yeah.
Yeah. Because all that stuff in the back of our mind of, but maybe I can have this and be liberated at the same time. Yeah. I mean, you know how it is, how we bargain about everything.
Even at that stage.
Yeah. I mean, what they bargain about is, of course, going to be much more subtle, you know, than what we bargain about. Yeah.
Because most of the process of the next stages is just to familiarize and strengthen that understanding,
Yeah.
correct perception.
Yeah.
It takes a long time to get it.
Right, and keep clearing out the
Obscurations.
obscurations and the wrong views. Yeah, it takes time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's maybe stupid or what you just said and about rebirth, like well, in my mind, like I get confused. I want to practice bodhicitta and I want to attain awakening to be able to help, and in order to do that I have to go through my crap. And because I took that vow of bodhicitta, like in my mind, I have to come back next life here.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I feel like I'm putting myself in a boat, and when you talk, I don't want to have another rebirth. Like, what do I do? Like, I feel like I'm cheating, or I'm...
Yeah. Okay. So on one hand, you know, when we really meditate on renunciation, it's like, I don't want another rebirth. I want out of here. On the other hand, we meditate on bodhicitta, and it's, I want to come back and be of benefit to sentient beings. So then it's like, well, wait a minute. You know, I can't have both. So what the bodhisattva does, okay, is the bodhisattva realizes that it is more beneficial for them in terms of benefiting sentient beings if they're able to get themselves out of cyclic existence than if they just keep taking rebirths under the influence of karma and afflictions. So a bodhisattva will aspire to get out of samsara for the benefit of others, so that they will have increased capabilities to be able to be a benefit to other sentient beings. Okay, so they put the two together in that way. For us, we got to keep that in mind, yeah. And it's.
And then we just need to trust that whatever happens, we'll go to the right place where.
Yeah, that we try and create the karmic causes to have a rebirth next lifetime where we can meet the Dharma and meet it when we're young and meet only perfectly qualified spiritual mentors and have a very receptive mind and have all the good conditions, because it's going to take us many lifetimes to get from here to awakening. So having good rebirths is very important. But our reason for having good rebirths is not simply that we want to avoid bad rebirths. Our reason is that on the basis of those good rebirths, then we'll be able to practice better and attain awakening sooner and be of benefit to others, more readily.
Tying in with this, would it be correct to say that a fully awakened Buddha chooses to be in samsara by emanation instead of by rebirth?
Yeah, a Buddha just emanates different bodies when they appear. Okay? Low-level bodhisattvas, take rebirths. Higher level bodhisattvas, they say have mental bodies and they also make emanations.
Well, you wouldn't say that a Buddha is in samsara.
No, you'd never say that a Buddha is in samsara, and you wouldn't say an Arya Bodhisattva is in samsara either.
Right.
Okay? But an Arya Bodhisattva, because
You come here to help?
But they've realized emptiness, so they're coming.
they've realized emptiness directly, so they're stopping the ripening of karma that perpetuates samsara.
But you do come in samsara.
Yeah, they do come in. The word samsara actually refers to a body and a mind under the influence of afflictions. So they don't take that kind of body and mind. When we use the word samsara to mean this world, yes, of course they come in this world.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So when a person has like the interferential realization of emptiness that we were talking about, they can't ever go back from that, can they?
No, once you have the inferential realization of emptiness, you don't.
Only going forward.
Yeah. As far as I understand, yeah. Yeah.
I can say something that you said at last winter retreat, I think really stuck in my mind, where we were meditating on the foulness of the body, and then you said something about this body being like a substandard vehicle and how wonderful it would be to get a body of that, the emanation body. And at that time I was like, what is she talking about? But I think, if the aim is really to help beings, this is pretty substandard.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it really does not fulfill your aims.
No, because you want to benefit sentient beings, and this body gets sick, and you can't benefit, Or you want to study or meditate, and this body gets tired. Yeah, so this body is definitely substandard. Low quality, yeah.
Relative to what you want to achieve, it's really not helpful.
Yeah.
You keep getting a body like this.
Yeah. Okay.